Hey guys, Lord here, back again with another edition of Throwback Thursdays, and what I have for you today is the McFarlane Toy Spawn Series 12 Cy-Gor 2. Yeah, kind of a no-brainer considering he made a brief appearance in my Spawn Universe Cy-Gor Megafig review, but at any rate, before we get into the meat and taters of this review, since I no longer have the packaging for this figure, I gotta be honest, your boy kind of screwed up and does not know where his one accessory is. He comes with two, technically, but we'll get into the other one a little bit later. But he came with a little kind of hook hand that you could swap onto this robotic arm here. You could pop this hand off and put the hook hand on. I unfortunately do not know where that is. I used to store it in the torso, not with the other thing in there, of course, but again, we'll get into that a little later. But yeah, when I pulled this guy out of my cabinet for that Cy-Gor review a couple of weeks ago now, please check it out if you haven't already, the hook was not in there. And it wasn't sitting anywhere on the shelf, so at this current time, I don't really know where that is. It must be somewhere in my dresser, but if I ever do find it, be sure to bring it back out for another Spawn review, or maybe another Cy-Gor related video. We'll see. But at any rate, taking a closer look at our big, lovable cyborg monkey boy here. This was always my go-to Cy-Gor until that Megafig came out. I always liked this one. I liked all these crazy wires coming off his head and on his arm. A bit haphazard here, but it's Spawn. That kind of makes sense. He's got the real metal chains here that hang off his neck and go down to his belly button. And then he also has more on his arms. And yeah, this was always my favorite Cy-Gor figure. I always liked the detail on this version. Albeit, he is a little bit short for nowadays. Maybe not, maybe he's about right, but he just seems a little bit skinny. I like the big, ripped, bulky Cy-Gors. This guy seems a little bit skinny. Just a little bit. And, look at the back here. I think to make up for that, they went to town on the sculpt and paint on this guy. He's got a lot of that going on. Which, I like the new one, but I think the sculpt and paint on this one is just a little bit better. It's more of an art piece, you know. This was back when Spawn wasn't really focused on articulation. It was focused on detail, and that's something you can really see in the Redeemer figures of this time. Actually, I take that back. I don't think there were any Redeemer figures at this time. I think those came out a little bit later. He got some schmutz on his arm there. Not surprising. But at any rate, as far as articulation on this guy goes, he does have a little bit. His head will rotate side to side. That works fine. His arms will go out to the side. It will go back down. It will rotate forward and back. He also has a swivel at the wrist. No fist hands on this guy, unfortunately. Put that down. His hips are on the most useless swivel joint known to man, the little V-cut there. There you go, and you can see the chains are connected to his wrists and then his ankles here. This one, for whatever reason, they decided to stick between his toes. But I shifted it a little bit, so it's not between his toes anymore. But that's your lot. That's the articulation on this guy. I thought he had a foot swivel on one side, but he does not. And I would show you how this hand comes off, but since I don't have that hook hand, and it's a little tricky to do, I'm not going to do that. But as far as gimmicks go, he does have one. His chest will actually open up. And you can see he's got some wires inside of it, which is pretty cool. And And he does come with a little buddy. Look at that. Comes with a little cyber chimp who actually did appear in the comic books and has a name, but his name escapes me at this current time, so my apologies for that. But as far as articulation on him goes, he's got a little rotation in the head, and his arms move up and down. And this is one of the reasons why this version of Cy-Gor is one of my favorites, is because I love this little monkey dude. I think that's really freaking cool. And then you can see all the wires inside of his torso there. Looking really cool, and you can even kind of pose this monkey up. Kind of look like he's coming at you with his little knife hand. You just wrap that around there. Do that, kind of pinch him in there, make it look like he's coming at you. That's pretty cool. I dig that. I think that's really cool. But on my shelf, I typically have this guy resting up here on his shoulder, kind of tucked between these wires here. If I can get that right. Kind of hangs a little bit. I had him cinched a little better up here before, but you get the idea. I had something like this going on. Something like that, I guess. But at any rate, getting the little monkey back in there. Love this little monkey dude. It's a little tricky to get situated in there, but it can be done. It's not too bad. I'm getting his chest plugged back in. If I can. The chest is probably the hardest thing to actually get situated on this guy. If I'm being quite honest with you. You gotta deal with the chain and you gotta deal with the monkey. There we go. It's on there about as good as I can get it. But I think it's locked into place. Rotate his head back around. And that kind of helps it stay on as well. That is Cy-Gor 2 in a nutshell for you. Really cool looking figure. Arguably as good as the new one. Take that or leave it. I don't really care. I still think this guy holds up compared to figures coming out nowadays. Especially if you see what Hasbro's doing with the Marvel line. So, with that being said, let's now move on and take a look at some size comparisons. First up here is Cy-Gor 2 next to his predecessor from Spawn Series 4, Cy-Gor 1. Next up here he is alongside our current Cy-Gor figure from the Spawn Universe line, who's kind of pushing Cy-Gor 2 to the side here because of how massive he is. And this is what I mean when I say I really like the kind of jacked Cy-Gors. That's exactly what this new one is to me, and I kind of prefer this look a little bit more so than the look Cy-Gor 2 went for here. But both are really super cool in their own right. And last but certainly not least, we have our two regulars, the Mythic Legion's Brother Manibulus, the 11th Spawn, who's not towering over everyone today because Cy-Gor 2 here was practically a Megafig back in his day. So with that being said, time to wrap things up, some final thoughts. Overall, and if I'm being 110% honest with you, if the new Cy-Gor Megafig is just too expensive for your budget, or just not your jam, you prefer a more interesting Cy-Gor, we'll say, I think this is the next best thing. It's got a lot going for it, really nice sculpt and detail, really cool features, the interchangeable hand hook thing. Again, I misplaced my hook, so my apologies again for that. And the little cyber chimp that stores in the torso are really cool extra features that we don't really get nowadays from the Spawn line. So if you're going to pick up a Cy-Gor and it's not going to be the new Mega Fig, I would highly suggest you try and track down this one because, well, first and foremost, it's leagues above its predecessor, and it's not a anime style version of the character, which is probably one of the other better Cy-Gor figures, but again, it does have that more animated aesthetic to it, so it's very limiting as far as where you can really put it as far as the display goes. And it's also not hindered from severe pre-posed McFarlane Toys-itis, which, for those of you who don't know, is worse than Ninja Turtle syndrome, because while those are posed in a kind of jaywalking stance, the McFarlane Toys pre-pose-itis, they're posed in one way, and that's all you can do. And unfortunately, the best Cy-Gor we got from McFarlane Toys back in the day, I would argue, is that statue-esque one, but again, it's very much a statue, and you can't really do much with it other than posing falling with Spawn. So this one, again, is the next best thing. It stands straight up and down, looks cool, has cool features. I think it's a total win, especially for a figure that's, what, almost, I want to say over 20 years old at this point. It came out in Spawn Series 12, which as far as I know was like, what, late 90s? So yeah, this guy's over 20 years old, maybe even 25 years old. That is crazy. See how well this thing held up. So with that being said, he's also really affordable. I paid $10 for this guy Mitten Box, and that's around when I was in high school or college a few years ago, and he hasn't really gone up since then. I used to see him at toy shows all the time for $5-10 Mitten Box. And for those of you maybe concerned about the quality of the figure, I've had 2 of these, didn't have any problems with them. And I say that because I did hook up my good buddy Brian Starner, aka Mr. Toy Nuts, with one quite a few years ago as well. And I think I actually paid less for his. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's edition of Throwback Thursdays. And if you are so inclined, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know whenever I upload more reviews like this one. If you haven't already, please hit me up on Instagram at Overlord Productions. But as always, keep the comments civil, because the world sucks enough as it is, especially when you misplace accessories. I mean, professional, right? Until next time, I'll catch you guys later.